Cool. Welcome back to the Breaker Bros. Tonight, I figured we could go over the draft, and I guess we could put our own grades on it. I don't know if you want to do it round by round, or maybe do the final grade after we go through each round.
Who we grading? Just the Bengals?
So I have the Bengals picks individually, and then I do have the Ravens, Browns, and Steelers picks just collectively. If we just want to review them afterwards.
Okay. Yeah,
but I
that's
figured
fine.
we could be a little bit more detailed with the Bengals since.
Okay. I'm going to be an easy grader because I haven't paid a ton of attention.
Yeah, I mean, and to be fair, I mean, like, we only know things based off of what other people tell us anyways. I mean, anyone at our level is pretty much the same. Like, we don't get the in-depth, like, interview type questions that they would actually ask the players or coaches, because I think that's also makes a big difference. And you can kind of tell with some of the picks, because, like, from the outside, like, it's crazy to me to see the evolution of mock drafts, because it's crazy to see how accurate they're getting even in the later rounds. Like, I would say 5 years ago, people were like perfected like the first round. But if you look with these mocks, it's like we're getting into like the third and fifth round of like knowledge. And then a little bit after that is where it gets kind of more of a wild card. Because I think at that point, teams really start picking based off of more personality traits versus maybe athletic ability. Like, they really try to find people that fit their system or their personalities versus just their athletic ability. But yeah, I guess we could just start with the first pick. How did you feel about Dax Hill at 31?
You know, I liked it in the moment. I still like it. Safety is not currently a position of need, but I mean, I guess you were telling me there were rumors that maybe they're going to play three safeties, or as long as he finds his way on the field, then I'm good with it, you know. But if they don't use him, you know, if it turns into like a Marvin Lewis pick where you pick a first round corner and stash him for the year, I think then I would change my opinion drastically. But I think that the idea is that next year he's going to for sure take over one of the main starting roles. And then this year, I think maybe he's just going to be kind of a playmaker that they look to get snaps. So I like it. It makes me think of the Devin Bush draft where, you know, you got the same system, you know, Michigan, and there's some overlap in how he's described as being, you know, fast playmaker. You know, I think Devin Bush is probably more towards linebacker and than Daxton Hill, but either way, I liked it. I mean, when you make the Super Bowl, you need to find guys that can complement what you have, right? Because if you're the second best team in the NFL last year, then really you need to complement what you've done in the past. And for the most part, they've upgraded their team from last year. So theoretically, it's going to be hard for a rookie to find playing time. And you're picking at the end of the first round. So, I mean, overall, I liked it.
Yeah, I was a little confused with the pick because just based off of the scouting report, he seemed kind of like a position that Mike Hilton plays already, and he's like phenomenal at what he does already. But I guess when it kind of clicked for me is when I found out how fast he was and actually how versatile he was. Like, from what I understand, he probably could have done a little bit more at Michigan, but I think there's expectations that he's going to kind of play a similar role to Mike Hilton, where he can kind of play in the nickel or whatever. But he can also, I think, where they expect him is that he will play on the outside at times. And I think they're saying that, I think that why they think he's worth the first pick is that he can do all those things. And then in the long run, he will become potentially a starting safety, or maybe, you know, he could fill in Mike Hilton's role after so many years. So, I think it was just a really solid pick because it seemed like they got a lot of value out of it, and it just seemed like it made sense for like a first round pick. Because like I thought they would probably go more towards like a corner, like a specific corner, not maybe a more versatile guy. But I guess it made more sense as the draft played out. I think they just went with in the first round, it was like truly best player available, and he kind of fit BPA plus kind of some needs. So I do think he'll have an impact early on. And I feel like when they made this pick, it made sense because it just seemed like a best pick available.
Mm.
Do you want to kind of give the grade for the first round, or just wait until the end to do like an overall grade?
Yeah, let's just do an overall grade.
Okay, yeah. So like, I guess this pick made more sense when we got into the second
As the
round.
person that wants to be reminded who we picked.
Huh?
I want to see all the picks, so it's
Oh,
all
okay.
fresh.
I got you. I got you. Yeah. But like, and then the second round came around, and then we got Cam Taylor Britt, and we actually traded up to get him. So it made like you could tell like this was our target if we were to get Dax Hill in the first pick or first round, and it seemed like. I don't know. It's always weird to me because, like, when I watch players like this, it seems like it's like a solid second round pick, and I can actually see him becoming a starter because, like, he's fast, like he plays very physical. That was another thing. Like, if you watch his highlights, like he's really good at like coming up and like tackling and stopping the run from the outside and stuff like that. So, and plus he's also fast as well. So he's another guy that runs a 4.3.
Yeah, I mean. You look at what the Bengals did in free agency in the secondary, right? And they were very successful at identifying guys that fit their system, and they put together a really good defense. So I have a lot of trust in this. I mean, it's sort of like what we were talking about before the draft, how I was worried about Linderbaum because like the Bengals have always not always, but have had a bit of a choppy record on picking offensive linemen, especially towards the end of the first round, second round area. Not, haven't hit very many, even singles, as of late. So you get a little nervous, but then the opposite's true. It's just they seem to have been very successful at identifying talented players that were maybe a little unheralded that fit into the system, and they got results. So, to me, it's like the same people are making the decisions. They're identifying this style of player that they like, and I trust them 100% to pick these types of players. Of course, if you told me before the draft that the Ravens wanted to pick Linderbaum, then I would have been completely different and be like, oh, we have to have this guy, and I would have been clamoring to trade up. But, it's sort of like different GMs have different or different teams, and front offices seem to be able to identify different types of talent.
So I'm so glad you brought that up because we're kind of going to go back to the first round again. But by you saying that, it reminded me because during the draft, it reminded me that we actually, in our first mock, we actually picked Dax Hill, and we got it right. So I went back and watched it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is that
So
where
like
that extra view came from?
Yeah. It was me.
Okay.
So what happened was, it's so funny. At pick 25, the Bills in our mock draft picked Linderbaum. And we looked at it. Yeah, we're like 25 Linderbaum. Like we're like, that doesn't make any sense. But we're like, whatever. And then we're like, based off of blah blah blah. And I was like, I'm just going to go off the PFF grade. We're probably going to take a corner right at this moment if Linderbaum's off. And I was they had someone else grade it, and you're like, no, they don't like people like that. And then the next person was Dax Hill, who was from Michigan, and that's when we said, oh yeah, we like Michigan guys. So you were actually the one that convinced us to switch it to Michigan. So just based off of, it was weird that mock, and what's significant about that, at pick 25, the Bills traded out to the Ravens to get Linderbaum.
Oh, nice.
So it was like, it was weird. It was like it was like destiny. It was weird because it was like and like had that not happened, right? Linderbaum probably would have fell to us and we would have picked him. But it was like they simulated something that kind of happened that didn't happen, but they predicted the Bills to pick it, but technically they did it to 25, but it was the Ravens. But it was just funny how that worked out. It was like very similar to our scenario. So like our line of thinking was like, okay, well, let's just take the best available DB, which was Dax Hill. So sorry, you, like when you said that, reminded me of that because I was like, oh yeah. So I went to check it and I was like, oh, and it was, I thought it was funny. The exact same pick, 25, Linderbaum went, except instead of the Bills, it was Ravens. It was just very interesting, actually.
Yeah. Hey, it's really interesting. You should watch it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
If you're watching this, you should watch that.
But also, with Cam Taylor, Britt being from Nebraska, and Zach Taylor coming from there as well, I think they had a lot of information on him, and I think the reason why they traded up was that they probably had him rated a lot higher. So it made sense, and they only moved up a few picks, and I think they lost to maybe a 6th rounder or something like that. But I think it was a very solid pick because I think
I like being aggressive. I
Yeah.
like picking the guys you want.
Yeah.
You know, if it just feels like there's a sense of urgency, a little bit of confidence, and picking people based on fits in your system. And I think that that's the way to pick, right? Like you should be trying to hit singles with your draft picks,
right.
thinking more like, okay, this guy is going to get playing time in these downs and these distances, and he's a fit with our team, as opposed to, pre-Joe Burrow, or, some of the dark days of Bengals football. They are always trying to draft the franchise savior with every pick. And it's just like, it was kind of scattershot, right? And now it just feels like there's a plan and there's some consistency to it. Kind of like when things started to kind of coalesce with Marvin Lewis, where like once he started to take over, we knew, oh, you look at the scouting reports, you're like, okay, who are the 6'5" and taller defensive ends, right? Who are the first round corners? Who are, and you see a team kind of developing a system and a framework to pick guys. And I think that's what makes you more successful when you're kind of just like, we need to find the person who's going to save the franchise. Then it's like I think that leads to more risky drafting and kind of like just being all over the place, and then you get, I think, bad results. So I think you get better results. I always thought like it's an advantage to the good teams have an advantage, even though they're picking guys later. Like they just seem to have an advantage because you're not picking a guy to be like a Pro Bowler his rookie year, right? You're picking a guy to just contribute on these certain downs and distances, and you still end up hitting a home run here or there, just even if you're conservative. So I mean, that was kind of my feeling going into this draft. So I'm completely biased that way because it kind of went in that direction where you see them picking, sort of the types of players that were used to, kind of like this younger group of guys picking, in terms of front office, head coach. Seems like they have a
no, and I think this is a good pick too because like long run he could eventually be the starter by the end of the year, and that would be a great sign for the Bengals. And at the very least, he's most likely going to be the starter next year, unless somehow we draft another corner in the first. But they did a pretty good job of setting themselves up for this year for depth, and then next year for potential starters because Apple and then our other backup corner are only on a 1-year deal, so it makes sense to kind of draft heavy DB wise.
yeah.
And then as far as our third pick, this one was kind of a surprise to me because I think, Zachary Carter, I think he's projected to play like the 3 tech or like inside at first, and then they might rotate him out on the edge. But like to me, this one's a little bit of a surprise because I think there was a few other defensive tackles, or I think there was one other available that was like linked to us. But overall, it makes sense why they picked him because he's more versatile, and then he had a lot of production at Florida. But I don't know if he's like ever projected to be like a big time player or anything, but he's more or less one of those role players that can fill in.
Yeah, but that's what I'm getting at. It's just like, okay, yeah, he's a 3rd round pick. So right now the consensus isn't that he's going to be an elite pass rusher, right? Because if everybody thought that, another team would have picked him in the 1st round, the Bengals wouldn't have had a chance.
Right.
But I mean, I'm completely biased because if you say defensive end from Florida, I mean, I think Carlos Dunlap. I'm like, yeah, sure, we'll take another Carlos Dunlap, right? not to say that I have any basis for that comparison other than position and school. But if you have a guy and you have a role for him, I feel like some of these guys are going to outplay their draft position because they're going to be put into a successful system. Um, I mean, it's like crazy talking about the Bengals this way. They have, you know, they've had success last year. They have a system. If he finds his way into the rotation, gets on the field, I think he'll produce because the defensive linemen that played last year, I mean, for the most part, were really successful. You know, I mean, some guys had career years. Um, so again, the Bengals put together their defensive line last year through free agency. So I have a lot of confidence in them identifying players that fit what they like to do. So
Yeah,
I like this pick too.
I think he's going to be above average type pass rusher because I think his quickness is going to be pretty good against guards. I think it would just be interesting, like how he's going to do, like if they do put him on the outside. But that seems to be the MO for the Bengals now, as far as defensive linemen, is that it seems like they like to rotate him not only on the edge but on the inside, unless you're like a premier pass rusher, which I think we pretty much only have one at the moment, or possibly two. Osai could be considered that, I think.
Yeah.
But all the other defensive linemen, I feel like they rotate in and outside. Like I've seen Hubbard do it. Zachary Carter, or this guy's projected to do it.
I mean that's what I think of when I think of the description of Zachary Carter's kind of like profile.
Yeah.
It just made me think of Sam Hubbard. And it's just like, okay, yeah, what will he do? Well, sounds like he'll rotate with Sam Hubbard, right? And if he, you know, can produce, at that level and be that type of player, I think that would be great for the Bengals.
Well,
And Sam Hubbard was also picked in the 3rd round, right? I mean,
I
it's
think
sort
the
of
reality
like
of the
you're
situation
asking.
too, this guy is probably not going to be like he'll make the was it 53 roster, but I think a lot of times he may be inactive. He's more of like a depth piece that can fit it. And then I think where he's probably going to make the actual active rosters if how well he can do on the outside too, because if he is effective on both, then like it's like you gotta have him on the roster. But it seems like he's just more of a depth piece, and then if someone does get hurt, he can kind of fill in, and we don't really lose much. Because like I kind of forgot, and then to me it's a pretty significant re-signing was Tupou. So I think he's like basically our 3rd defensive lineman that we're gonna have. But if something were to happen to him, then I feel like he would come in and take his place if needed. So actually, I think was it Zach Kerr or Carr, whatever his name? We picked him up in the. He's essentially going to take that guy's place, I think.
Okay.
Whereas like a versatile defensive lineman, and I think going into the 4th round, which I think a lot of people were kind of confused about this, but this is your deep or offensive lineman. I feel like you were looking for one, but this is the 6'6", 315 offensive lineman from North Dakota State University.
Yeah.
And he can pretty much play all the positions besides center, I think. So I think this is the one that most people were concerned about the draft because in terms of value, this is the one that we reached the most for and probably hurt our grade nationally the most, like from
Really?
Yeah, because I think a lot of people thought he had potential to either go undrafted or maybe the earliest at the 6th round. I mean, obviously we picked him a lot earlier, but I think what makes this pick special is that I think it was Frank Pollock's guy. So like they were willing to maybe take it a little bit early. But also people got to keep in mind, and you kind of like reminded us during the live stream during the draft, is that it's essentially a 5th round pick anyway. So
You're right.
if you got to take a guy 30 picks sooner than what you think most people are going to take, then you got to do it, especially at this point.
Right. The old draft table. It's just like, okay, what's the difference between end of the 4th round pick and the top of the 6th round pick? It's like, not much of a trade. It may not even be a 7th round pick difference, right? So it's just like, so what you're saying is if you gave him a 6th-round grade as a draft guru, and the Bengals traded back and picked up an extra 7th-round pick and picked him in the 6th round, you'd be like, "Oh, that's an A." I mean, whatever. I think we're getting a little too confident in our ability to analyze guys. I mean, you know, I like the idea. I'd like to see it work. I'd like to see the Bengals start developing offensive line talent. But a 4th-round pick, if someone says you're reaching and that's like their biggest bad thing or the worst thing they can say about your draft, then I think you're fine. But North Dakota State is kind of like I think that didn't they win like 2 national championships in a row at their level?
Nah, I think it's like 6.
Yeah. So I mean he's a good player from a good team. I mean, and if he's ranked as a 6th rounder and we picked him at the end of the 4th round, I don't have a problem with that. That's the guy you want, right?
I listened to the press conference after the pick, and I think one of the deciding factors outside of like his actual attitude, because it seems like this guy's demeanor is like will fit perfect with like the Bengals and like how like the people that we want, is that the benefit of playing at North Dakota State University is that they actually play in a pro style offense. And I think Frank Pollock mentioned that was that like his transition in terms of like terminology is actually going to be easier than most other people because he's already doing it now. Because a lot of offensive linemen even in the bigger colleges, like they're literally told who they need to be blocked, and it's just like a one thing. Like it's very simplified, and then it gets in the NFL, it becomes like a whole different language.
All that weird spread stuff.
Yeah, they really dumbed it down. So like, so that's the benefit of going to the only. Problem is that you don't play the same type of athletes, so that's the biggest question mark. Is that because like if you watch his film, like he looks really good, but then obviously, like the level of competition he's going against is going to be a lot different. So that, but I don't know if you watch it, like he looks like he could be a really decent right tackle, like in the long run. Like if you just like he's got the build for it, right? So it's really not a bad pick if you're in the 4th round, and if you look how our draft fell, like we went. Basically BPA, DB, cornerback, and defensive lineman. Like we essentially had to pick an offensive lineman at this point, and we obviously picked the guy that we wanted and that fitted in our system the most at that point. I'm sure there was offensive linemen earlier,
I'm sure the Bengals. I mean, I think it's really straightforward, right? The Bengals in free agency signed a right tackle, they signed a center, and they signed a guard. And last year they drafted a guard in the second round, and they picked up the 5th-year option on a left tackle. So I think they see that as their starting offensive line. I mean, if you look at it that way, I think the offensive line definitely got better. I mean, really the only thing I don't understand is not having Spain back. I thought he played well.
I think they're still going to resign him because I was looking at all the different things, and I still think we have position to pick up one more offensive lineman. But like you said before, there's going to be a lot of cuts, so they're probably waiting for that as well. Like there could be a lot of other offensive linemen.
Right. So they can build.
Well, Eagles, didn't they draft the center from Nebraska in the 2nd round, and that could be another person that could be cut that might be worth picking up for 1 year or 2.
Because that's one player that I worry about the Bengals having an option on, because I mean he's an Andy Reid guy, right? So I could see him immediately going to Kansas City. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but Kansas City they already have an all-star.
Oh yeah, we talked about that. They already have a center, so maybe. Yeah, I do think that there are going to be opportunities to upgrade the offensive line further. I don't think that you're going to wreck the franchise by picking guys you like to play offensive line in the middle of the draft. I mean,
And I think we're probably better off picking linemen at this point than early on. I think like our record shows probably will do better with this
Yeah, I
pick.
mean, if you're not good at developing offensive linemen, then stop using first through third round picks on it. Do fourth through seventh, right?
So I think this next pick to me was the most telling. Tyson Anderson, which is pretty much a full-on safety. But like on the reverse of the previous pick, it's like this was more of like this probably, I don't want to say steal of the draft, but in terms of value, like I think he had a much higher grade than where we picked him at. And actually that was another thing. They traded up. This was the second one that we traded up for, and this was the third most spots that we traded up in draft history to pick a player. So that's pretty significant. But to me, it seemed like they had a pretty good plan in mind, the Bengals, based off how the draft played out. And I guess based off of how people were picked, with the players that we picked, is that we got really fast on the back end of our defense. I don't think people realize that. But all these players, they run a 4-3.
Yeah.
And
it's a lot of speed.
Yeah, a lot of speed, a lot of athleticism. So, and the reason why I think this is telling is that I think the Bengals expect Jesse Bates to hold out. I think they expect something weird to go on with that.
Really?
Yes, because he didn't show up to voluntary workouts, which is they're playing off as that it's to be expected. However, some questions that they've had with Zach Taylor was that basically they're like asking about Jesse Bates, but he basically said that they're taking it day by day. Like he kind of brushed it off, like, this is a day by day situation. But it's weird that you would say that day by day, right? And then Mike Hilton had his big press conference, and like the theme was that everyone thinks we're a fluke and whatnot. But when it came to Jesse Bates, he's like, yeah, I want him to get re-signed or whatever. But he also said, we understand it's a business. And then he said something to the extent that we wouldn't be mad, if he plays for a different team, or, like if he had to do whatever. Like, it's just weird how he phrased it. Like, so like something tells me maybe in the background, maybe the Bengals are talking to other teams, maybe about a possible trade. But they're definitely prepared for a holdout, I feel like, with this pick. Because it's like, it's pretty much signaling that, like, for sure one of the two, Bates and is it? I want to say Bell, but I feel like it's wrong.
Yeah, Von Bell.
Yeah, Von Bell. One of them, or maybe both, will be gone. But the fact that they picked this guy and traded up to get him, I think that's a pretty telling sign that there's probably going to be drama going into the season.
Okay. Well, then I like the first round pick even better then. If they're afraid Jesse Bates is going to hold out, then that's smart.
The signs are pointing to it. Like,
yeah, I mean, from my perspective, if you're an NFL player, I understand. You want to make as much money as possible because careers are short, injuries are common. And, I mean, the business from the team side is, just the difference in leverage, right? If you play MLB or NBA with guaranteed contracts, if you get hurt, at least you still get the money that you were planning on getting. And then maybe you don't get like the next deal, but you get hurt, you're done. But at the same time, I think he's franchised, right?
He is,
franchise
yes.
Safety's still getting a lot of money.
Yeah, he's getting it for 1 year, but there's a difference of making $12 million or 13 1 year versus like the $50 million that he wants, or whatever signing bonus you would get to maximize a 4-year deal is basically what he wants. Was that 30, probably in the 30 million range, right? It's like 30 million up front versus a 12.
But
the direction we're going is a breakup, right? Is because the
yeah,
Bengals never.
to me, it's
unless
it
you're a
would just be
receiver
hard.
or a quarterback,
If
you're not
you
going to
if you
get
put
top
if
dollar
you
with
put
the
a
Bengals.
contract in front of me that said you sign this, because it's guaranteed, right? Like, so the franchise, even if you get hurt, you still get that money, right? It would just be hard for me to like turn down like 12 million guaranteed to try to parlay that into like,
Well, either way,
try to
they're
double it, right? It's
by
like gambling,
them
right?
drafting the way they did. They definitely prepared for the long term, but they especially prepare for the short term. And if he holds out, it's really like, because I thought like, to me, what's scary is having Bates and Hill as your DBs
Hmm.
because you can do whatever, like literally, because like both of them on each side of the field could literally do anything. And like you could disguise so much with that. Like that to me is like the biggest threat, and that's what I would want. And don't get me wrong, Bell is really good for what he does, but he's not really like coverage wise. Like we could, that's where we could get an upgrade, right? And that's what Dax Hill is, right? But also Anderson, I like he could be like a real big steal because like his measurables are really good.
The
But
thing
he went to a
like
smaller
about
school.
Bell is I feel like he brought an attitude to the defense.
Well, that's kind of like what Anderson's going to be too. I feel like this guy is like he's like the true safety.
Bell did it.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think they want to mold this guy
that's
after
why
him.
I like him. And he's the type of guy that money wise, I don't think it kills you to have him. You know,
no. Because I mean,
if you overpay him slightly or whatever, I just think like the market.
He's making about $5 million a year now. So I mean, what's the most he could potentially make? 6, maybe next year, if that.
Yeah.
So it's not really breaking the bank.
To me, it's you I like the leadership he brings to the team and the attitude. So to me, that's why we go. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense. There's been a lot of posturing between the two sides. So
it hasn't like boiled up because we're not really close to the beginning of the season yet. But I mean, just based off some of the things what people are saying, like it seems like there's more going on in the background than we realize. But by them drafting the way they did, it prevents that tension and him having the upper hand. But they're definitely headed towards a divorce because it's like with Jesse Bates in his direction, and I think what his agent is known for is as far as like getting top dollar for his players.
Mm-hmm.
The Bengals just don't spend top dollar on safeties or guards. Like the only thing that we really spend top dollar on are quarterbacks and receivers. If you're not one of those two, then you're pretty much screwed. It's like it sucks, and like Bates is like one of the safeties that I wish. Who knows? Maybe we can resign him. I hope we can. I feel like we can. Like
sad. Let's move on.
Yeah. Because he's like literally like the safety I've always wanted. Like
yeah, no, I mean he's been awesome.
Yeah,
I hope he stays, but
I think he stays if he's willing to take a little bit less. But I just I
mean,
also get it. Like if you feel
short, man, it never makes sense to me to take less, right?
But I guess where I'm at is like if it's only like $5 million around that range, it's like damn, that's like so close. Like I feel like it's only got to be that much.
That's $5 million. That's a lot of money.
It is. It is. But in terms of like football and like franchise, and
I'm not saying that I wouldn't hold out or I'm not saying there's anything wrong with holding out for the extra $5 million. I'm just saying if you waved a piece of paper in front of me and said sign this and you get 12 million or 15 or whatever it is, it'd be hard for me to say no because I want like 25 or 30. I'd be like, yeah, I'll take the 15.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there won't be any drama and he'll show up, and I'm hoping, but it just seemed like based off of what they were saying, there was no definites. And then with Mike Hilton said, because when he said another team, I'm like, isn't that kind of early for that? Like we got one more year, so it's like,
yeah.
I thought that was really interesting wording, because like even if you expected him to leave the next year, then like I feel like it'd be kind of early to reference another team this year when you have a whole year to play out and potentially playoffs.
Yeah,
so it tells me that there's something more going on.
Look back. It'd be interesting to go and look back and see what happened with the whole Le'Veon Bell thing. Like, did he actually end up ahead by holding out and not doing the franchise thing in the end? Like I know he signed a big contract with the Jets, but he didn't come anywhere close to playing through the contract. But I mean, like if you look at the actual dollars, did he make more than he would have had he just signed? Or did he break even? Or was it like close enough that it doesn't matter?
I bet he probably got closer to breaking even, but that's probably with playing a few extra years than what the contract would have been worth. Because I think what hurt him was he held out, and then I felt like a few other running backs got big deals, and then that's when running backs started to get all hurt.
The way the NFL salary cap works, right? Every year the salary just goes up, right? Like the position, the salaries for the positions don't seem to go down necessarily. So if you play that year on the franchise tag, you do risk getting hurt and you do have to wait for the guaranteed money. But is the guaranteed money going to be less if you actually make it through? And like if you bet on yourself, right? Like, say you have a great year on the franchise tag and then you're off the franchise tag. Well, the salary cap goes up 10%. So that means, like, wouldn't your guaranteed money then go up?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like he
I
kind
mean,
of got
like,
screwed because like,
how much richer is Kirk Cousins because
well that's
he
different.
because he played on like 8 franchise tags, right? I mean, it's just like because it like there's an adder on it then if you sign multiple franchise tags in a row, right?
Well, I think nowadays you can only sign up to 2 in a row, so you can't do more
Oh,
than that.
really?
Yeah, and then
Okay.
yeah, I think that's pretty much it. But I think Le'Veon Bell just it was bad timing because I feel like a lot of running backs at that time were signing big deals, but then they all got hurt afterwards. And then once franchises realize, oh, you can't put that much guaranteed money into running backs because they get hurt a lot, that's when it all stopped. That's when you notice, like, because even running backs getting draft high seems to die down. Like, there's only been like a handful of running backs been drafted in the first round the last 2 or 3 years. It's kind of weird. Like they either been drafted at the very end of the round, first round, or in the second round.
I mean, who won the Super Bowl this year, right? Where'd they pick their running back?
The Rams?
Yeah. 4th rounder? Who
Oh,
even played?
honestly, I couldn't even.
I mean, that's what's killing the running back market is, you know.
Well, with running backs, I feel like you truly only get like 3 really productive years, and then after that, it's like kind of like.
Well, it's tough, right? Because if you're a great running back, then you get a lot of carries in college. You get a lot of carries in high school. Well, I mean, like there's the whole joke about the whole Derrick Henry film, his senior year of high school. Like he had a ton of carries, but I think I want to say like he scored so many touchdowns that if you start to look at it and you're like, wait a minute, did anybody actually ever tackle him? Did he just like, you know, yeah, he had like 500 carries, but he scored like, so many touchdowns. You run out of bounds so much. It's like, was he actually getting hit a ton? Or sometime you have to look up Derrick Henry's like senior stats. They're like insane.
All I know is that would be crazy in high school going to get someone like him. Like, yeah, that would be completely unfair.
Yeah, because the only people fast enough to catch him are going to be tiny, and it's not a good combination.
Yeah, that's weird. And then we got this guy in the 6th round or the 7th round. I feel like
7th round, I think. Because didn't they trade the 6th round pick to move up to get the?
Yeah. I think it was the 7th round.
Yeah.
But either way, he just seems like who we would draft, like the ones that you were talking about before in terms of defensive end, like the 6'4" or whatever. Tall,
fast, versatile.
Only thing, it seems like the theme with our later picks is that they just came from smaller schools, and that's probably why they kind of hurt him. Because like if you just watch their film or like look at him like athletically, you would think like, oh wow.
I did read an article on him where they said that he was a bit old, or maybe.
Yeah, I think a lot of our later picks were kind of old, and actually I think our youngest picks are Dax Hill. I think he's 21, and I think maybe our 2nd round pick, but actually maybe. I think we had like an older draft, but to me that was like the theme of this draft. It was very intentional. We definitely got guys that we wanted, and it was more or less to fill like depth, not necessarily starting. So I in terms of like overall grade, what would you give them? What would you give the Bengals?
I'm gonna be easy grader, so I think probably like a B plus.
B plus.
Yeah, I mean, because last year was an A, the year before that was an A, right? So this would be like a B plus. I mean, the pundits seem to indicate that they haven't drafted like a future Hall of Famer, right? So, I mean, the previous two drafts, it looks like we got Hall of Fame type players, right? But you never know. I mean, I just think if you draft good players and put them in a good position on a winning team, that's where you find, you know, the end of the first round guys that, outplay their draft position because they've been put in a position to succeed, and it's a lot better for the football player to get better if they're put in a position to succeed as opposed to, having to carry a bad team all by themselves. That's much harder. So, B plus. What's your grade?
Yeah, I'm probably right about the same. I'd say B plus. Just like maybe during the draft, I think maybe more closer to B. But I think it's a little bit better than a B. After like reviewing it and just seeing how like things are gonna fall through and just listening to the coaches, like after the picks, just explain like how they felt about the players and where they fit in. It all made sense. It didn't like, I could see maybe there was a few rounds where maybe it felt like a reach, but then at the same time, I felt like we got a lot of value in our later rounds that kind of made up the difference.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, it seemed like we got the people that we wanted, and that's going to make the biggest difference. And it was a different draft for us. Like when you're drafting at the top of the draft, like you're looking like you have to get those dynamic players. But we essentially
picking at the top of the draft next year, right?
Right. But we essentially got all of our dynamic players that we needed that got us over that hump. Now this is or to get us into the playoffs. These are the players that hopefully can get us over the hump and maybe hopefully get that Super Bowl. It's even weird to say that because it's like we're like everything felt weird at the beginning of last year. Huh?
It's rational to say that.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you were in the Super Bowl last year and you lost a close game. Some would say you lost that game by like 2 seconds of protection. And you fixed that problem, right?
Yeah.
Why did they lose? Because they didn't give Joe Burrow 2 more seconds to hit Jamar Chase on that last play, right?
Well, not only that,
they signed 3 offensive linemen.
The Bengals have the most continuity between like coaches and players. So like all the other teams either lost coaches or they lost coaches or they lost significant players or they're trying to incorporate newer players with new coaches. Like for instance, like Denver, like they're adding, well, they lost some dynamic pieces, but they gained a lot more, I would say. But like, how are you all going to fit that together? Like, is that really going to be just a smooth transition? Like, is it really just as easy taking one player from a team, like a quarterback, and putting on another? I mean, on paper,
I think if it's Russell Wilson, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people expect it, but look at their division too. Like, no one really.
Yeah, it's a tough division though.
Yeah, but
they're going to be in a very.
It's a tough division. Plus, you're putting all that pressure on one quarterback. What if he gets hurt? Like, then what?
Well, I mean, that's true for every team.
That is true, but I'm just saying, like, that's why it's like it's hard to put all that pressure on one person. It's like that's why you always.
Yeah, but I mean, that's how the NFL is. If you have a good quarterback,
you're right about that.
You're likely a playoff team, and 3 teams from one division can make the playoffs. You just have to beat up on the teams in the other division or the other divisions in your conference that don't have quarterbacks, and I mean. It is a tough division. I mean, they have 3 top-notch quarterbacks. Am I leaving somebody out? Who else? Oh, never mind.
You're talking about Kenny Pickett?
Kenny Pickett? No, I was talking about the AFC West. And I was thinking, who else is out there? I was like, the Raiders. So they have 3 top-notch quarterbacks in that division. I think Derek Carr is in the very okay grouping.
I think I mean, he's in the top half of the quarterbacks. So he's definitely top 15.
He's buzzcut Andy Dalton. I mean, I like Andy Dalton, but I'd rather have Joe Burrow.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah.
I'm just saying, all right. So you want to call this a wrap, and you want to talk about the other things and just hop on a new stream? Take a little bit of a break.
We can just call it a wrap. That's fine.
Okay.
All right. Well, that concludes the stream. We'll see you guys later.